This episode is brought to you by Purina's Purple Leash Project. Only 17% of domestic violence shelters in the U.S. currently accept pets. As a result, 48% of survivors delay leaving because they can't take their pets with them. Through the Purple Leash Project, Purina is helping abuse survivors and their pets escape and heal together. To join Purina, visit purpleleashproject.com.
My sister won't be quiet, and the dog just threw up all over my shoes. Why does none of this bother me? Could it be this spacious comfy car?
The spacious new Volkswagen Atlas. It does life beautifully.
Milt, your new book is called The End of the World. Now, can you tell us when it's going to be, or do we have to buy the book?
And hello and welcome to Unequal Sequel. My name is Dave and I'm one of the two hosts of this powerful podcast.
Oh, you put it all into that, didn't you?
Yeah.
And I'm Rich and I'm the other host of this powerful podcast. Think of me as the Mandalorian to Dave's Grogu, the child. He's small and green and I never take my helmet off.
Yeah, nailed it again. The premise of Unequal Sequel is very simple. We ask our guests for their best ever sequel, worst ever sequel, and finally their dream sequel.
And of course, we will often drift off and talk about things completely unrelated to those sequels, movies in general, and sometimes just life.
We also have to mention we do delve a little bit into spoilers. So if we mention a film you haven't seen and you don't want it spoiled, just skip that part and come back and we'll probably be talking another film you don't want to know about and skip that part. But you get the drift. We sometimes spoil movies, but mostly are old.
Yeah, don't skip too much.
Yeah,
You'll regret it.
It's a great podcast. Because coming up on today's episode is the brilliant Danny Wallace.
Danny is, does Danny need an introduction? And also, if I list all the things he does, we're going to be here all day. But essentially, Danny Wallace is a brilliant broadcaster, journalist, comedian, writer, actor, just everything. He has got a brilliant podcast, the Manatomy podcast.
Great.
He has a wonderful show on XFM, RadioX. I keep calling it XFM, but it's RadioX now. Yeah. On a Sunday morning. Danny Wallace's important broadcast. He is the voice of the movies that made us on Netflix. He is the narrator of that show. He's done everything. He wrote Yes Man, and then was in the movie Yes Man. He's done loads of stuff. He's done loads of stuff with Dave Gorman. He started his own country, for goodness sake. He's done everything.
He's done everything. And we're very excited to sit down with Danny and chat all things sequels with him.
These are Danny Wallace's Unequal Sequels. Enjoy.
What was the first sequel that you got excited about? Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. The first sequel I got excited about, I think it was when I discovered that there were so many Police Academy films. I was like, hang on, what? I watched the first one and I thought, well, this is, they've reached the peak of Hollywood here. This is absolutely marvelous. Carey Mahoney, the whole setup, the crazy police captain. You had everyone had a favorite character. That was the great thing about Police Academy. It was just like a sketch troupe doing all their stuff. And then I discovered there was a Police Academy 2 and a 3 and a 4. And then there was Ski Academy, there was Combat Academy, anything with an academy, no matter how bad it was. And some of them weren't great. They sort of just took that thing. But for me, and the early days of VHS when you could do that. Actually, that reminds me, the first person who ever had a video recorder was my friend Jamie's dad. And it was magic. I didn't understand what was happening. I went round to his house. It was a Saturday morning, and he had a Star Wars film And he was able not just to show us Star Wars again, but to pause it. And he was like demonstrating the pause button. And I was going, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. Even though the pause was like really jittery and really kind of, it was not, like a screenshot. It was just weird. And so really actually thinking about it, because I missed out on Star Wars, I was too late, but Empire Strikes Back, that's when I knew that there were going to be more of these. And so that was probably one of the most exciting moments, but certainly being a little bit older when I discovered that there was more than one Police Academy film, I was delighted.
Which one's your favourite?
Do you know, I for some reason, I want to...
They all mold together.
Yeah, I couldn't really tell you the difference between... I mean, Citizens on Patrol is always something that... was that the first one? No, that might have been the second. I'm not sure. But Police Academy 4, for some reason, strikes me as a title I know really well. So I guess I watched that one a lot.
Citizens on Patrol sticks out for me as well. Whenever someone says Police Academy, that's always what I think of.
Yeah, and you immediately hear the Citizens on Patrol.
Yeah.
And the sort of the super cool, I mean, looking back at it, it clearly wasn't very cool. But it seemed to a kid watching in 1980s Loughborough to be absolute. I mean, I managed to meet, what's his face? Michael, the guy who makes all the noises.
Oh, yeah.
I can't. But I was able to do a thing. I was hosting. Was I hosting? Or was I doing? I was doing something on Radio 4, and I had to interview him. And there was lots of other guests, and I took little bits of all their books and wrote it down and asked him to provide the sound effects as we went. And so I got a live sort of scripted performance from him. But I loved Bobcat Goldthwait. Zed, I think that was his name in the movies.
Yeah.
And Carey Mahoney as well, Steve Guttenberg, who I recently contacted and asked if he'd come on my podcast. And he said yes.
Wow.
So at some point I'm going to speak to the man who had the classic sort of 80s Californian film star body when they were allowed hair, like hairy pecs. And they were all glistening and smiling on a beach and wearing tiny shorts. So I'm looking forward to meeting him one day.
Fantastic.
He was a massive star in the 80s, wasn't he?
Huge.
He was Three Men and a Little Baby, Cocoon, this. He was the main guy.
He was kind of like the cheeky everyman, the boy next door. But still had that kind of, that kilowatt smile. You remember that from the sort of the 80s, Harrison Ford's smile. My God, I'm a straight man, but it makes me go weak at the knees when he knows what he's doing as well. He knows the power of that smile.
Absolutely. Is Police Academy, is that Mission to Moscow and something to Miami? Is that how desperate they got towards the end?
Yeah, I think they just thought, I don't know what to do now. We've sort of done this. Let's just set it in a different city and maybe have like angry Russians or women in bikinis.
Yeah. If they came back with a Police Academy 8, whatever it is now, with the same cast, would that interest you?
Oh.
Would you get excited for that?
I don't know whether I'd prefer to leave it in the 80s. And they'd all be quite old now for inept police officers.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to see their career progressions. Who is now, Lassard, who's now the captain or whatever.
It would be quite interesting just to see if they are, now they've grown up, now they're older, if they are still just as useless as they were back then.
Yeah. Have they learnt any laws? Have they made any successful arrests? So who knows?
Guttenberg would have to be chief, wouldn't he?
Yes, come on. Yeah.
I think Kim Cattrall would be chief, surely.
Yeah, that's true as well. God, yeah, she was in it as well. Yeah, but
I think I fell in love with her a little bit on that one.
I think everyone did.
It's that's just human nature. But no, yeah. So the Police Academy films, were they were just great, sort of repeat watches.
So, what is your pick for best ever sequel in your eyes?
Well, best ever sequel. And by the way, on the day that we're recording this, they just announced that they're bringing back, well, at least doing a pilot of Quantum Leap.
Oh, really?
Which
I've not seen that, but that's very exciting.
Hugely exciting. And that for me was just like Wednesday nights, BBC Two, 9 o'clock, I think, 9:05 maybe. Just the adventures of Sam Beckett, and it just seemed like the most exciting premise. Like, where's he going to end up this time? Anyway, I'm getting off the topic. The best ever sequel, as you know, is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Brilliant.
Which I watched again over Christmas to introduce my kids to the world of Indiana. I didn't go for Raiders of the Lost Ark because of the Melty Man. I didn't go for Temple of Doom because of the monkey brains and the pulling out of the heart.
Yeah.
And I was trying to think, what's the horrific thing that happens in Last Crusade, and can I expose small children to it? And I thought, well, I'll give it a go. And they loved it. They loved it. One of my kids is 5. He loved Indiana Jones. No, he's got no real grounding in, Nazism. Not that sounds like I've raised the others in that ethos. What I mean is, he just knew they were bad guys. My little girl loved it and was just watching, and the bit that really stuck out to them was the leap of faith, where, it's an impossible thing for this man to do. And we've seen him bleed. We've seen him get bloodied and broken and bruised. And now we're asking him to do the impossible. But if he has faith, maybe he can do it. And that was a standout moment. From then, the film gets quite magical and strange. And there's an old Arthurian knight who's 100 million years old, and things kind of get, there's the moment where Sean Connery is magically healed, and I guess there's a sort of a tonal shift then when it becomes something bigger. But the reason I wanted to show it to them is I just think it's the best of the Indiana Jones films, and it's brilliant because of Sean Connery as much as anything, who I'd never seen do a comic role. And not only is he this very funny character with everything kind of delivered perfectly, but he's the only person we've seen who can put Indiana Jones in his place and turn our hero into a little boy again. When I saw the Indiana Jones films, I told my dad very seriously that he was from now on to refer to me as Indy, which lasted maybe 3/4 of an hour.
Brilliant.
But watching Indiana Jones for the first time in the Loughborough Curzon, I remember being kind of blown away by, like, it had never occurred to me that there were kind of origin stories. You just accepted Indiana Jones for who he was. When you saw him in Raiders of the Lost Ark, you were like, well, this is just a super cool, the guy with his hat and his whip. And the twist is that he's also, a kind of straight down the line teacher. And you sort of wonder what his holidays are. How he's managed to get so much holiday from this
terrible
university.
teacher, right? It's like,
awful.
Can I have my dissertation marked, please? Oh no, sorry, I'm in Cambodia.
Why is there blood on this? You never saw him do marking. You always saw him get beaten up on a ferry or something, a boat, but never having to go downstairs and do the marking. But in Last Crusade, obviously it starts with young Indy, and you're like, oh my god, of course he was a young guy, and it was at a different time, and you find out how he got the scar, you find out why he's scared of snakes, and there's one moment when it still, for me, hadn't clicked, I suppose, the first time I saw it, that this was young Indiana Jones, where you see who you think is Indiana Jones, and it's a guy, I think with a whip, but certainly with a hat, and then you realize that's not Indiana Jones, that's the kid's Indiana Jones, and it all starts to, you start to realize how he became who he was, and of course you find out how he got his name. And for me, that was just magic as a kid, discovering all these things about the character that I'd never questioned before. And of course, it's a good guy punching Nazis.
Yeah, which is always brilliant. I was always exactly the same as you. 5 years old, all I wanted to be was Indiana Jones or an archaeologist. And my dad had to sit me down and explain to me what an archaeologist actually was, and that you didn't get a hat and a whip and go on adventures. You got a brush and you had to sit in a trench and brush dust off of things.
Which you'll largely be digging holes in fields in Wales.
Yeah, sort of took the shine off it slightly. Never became either Indiana Jones or an archaeologist. Didn't happen.
Oh well, there's still time. There's still time.
I don't know what it says about me, but I always wanted to be his sidekick because I was more interested in like Round Trip.
Yeah.
Right? So like,
Yeah.
I was like, that's the role I can do.
Short
That's
Round,
the role
yeah.
I can see myself in.
Short Round, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember very vividly watching Temple of Doom and loving Short Round, and I wanted him to be my brother. I just thought we'd have such fun together, and that never happened either.
No.
Where's he now?
Yeah, where is he now? It's in Goonies, wasn't he? And then
Yes,
He is in a new film with Michelle Yeoh. It's coming out. I can't remember the name of it. It looks absolutely insane. It's going to be at like
I know the one you mean.
Sundance and South by Southwest.
Where there's like an infinite number of Michelle Yeohs, right?
Yes, he's in that.
Wow.
Because I was watching the trailer, I was like, that's Short Round. That's Data.
Great. Yeah, Data, of course.
brilliant.
When you were young and you saw it the first time, had you already seen the other two Indiana Joneses? So you knew what you kind of going into?
Yeah, I think I probably saw Temple of Doom first. Then maybe Raiders of the Lost Ark was on TV and I recorded it and watched it a billion times. I remember watching it with my uncle and auntie from Switzerland, to whom video technology was still a mysterious art, and watching it. And when, the bad guy melts at the end, I just remember the absolute horror on their faces. They'd never seen anything like it. Swiss TV at that stage was pretty pedestrian. I remember from going over there, it was largely cycling races or these nightly shows where people play the accordion and yodel. I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but it was true. And it's all just shot in a big, imagine Noel's house party, except it's just people playing the accordion. And then the camera just goes through and it's all just big men with beers sitting at tables, brilliant, glancing at the camera and nodding. And it was like that, interminable for hours. So Raiders of the Lost Ark, I don't know if they thought they were watching a documentary, but certainly at that moment, there was sheer horror on their faces. At one point, Noel's house party did make it to Switzerland. I think it was on something like BBC World, and my grandma used to phone us because she'd caught an episode, and she just kept saying, "What a lovely house he's got." Because I think she just thought it was like those Swiss shows.
Brilliant.
What did she think of Mr. Blobby?
I don't know what her take on Blobby was. I do remember that sometimes she'd phone up and Mr. Bean might be on, and instead of saying, hello, how are you, she would just spend the full half hour describing what Mr. Bean was doing. And my grandma used to laugh to the point of peeing herself. Twice it happened in public. It was brilliant, and we all just found it even funnier. There was no shame. It was just like, yeah, that happened. With Mr. Bean, she'd just be going, "Oh, now he's got a fish out of his pocket," and we're all like, "Yeah, we've all seen this," but we just listened to her describing it. So it was like the audiobook of Mr. Bean,
brilliant,
dictated by an 80-year-old Swiss woman.
I would listen to that. I would definitely listen to. If you can record that, I would definitely listen. That'd be an audible bestseller. That.
Yeah, that would be good. So have your kids been asking to watch the other ones yet?
My eldest has seen Raiders. I played in that first, and then Temple of Doom, and he's seen Last Crusade twice now. But I'm yet to face,
where I'm going with this.
Yeah. We're yet, and to be fair to it, the fourth Indiana Jones film, although many deny it exists, I only saw it on a plane, and I'm never sure whether the filmmaker sets out thinking this will be brilliant on an 8-inch screen with loads of background noise and all the rest of it. So perhaps I haven't given it the chance I should have. But no, I haven't even told them it exists.
I watched it in a really nice cinema and it didn't make it any better. So
oh no. Yeah. Oh well.
I still got to the point where I thought, so you can survive a nuclear war by the nuclear explosion by hiding in a fridge. How do we know this?
I don't know, but maybe that's what gave Boris so many ideas. For if you can escape a nuclear bomb, you can escape the press.
Well, he did try and lock himself in a fridge once.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
exactly.
That's
same idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry, are you looking forward to the fifth one?
I am looking forward to the fifth one. I think that sometimes with sequels, there's a slight misstep, and that's good in a sense because some time passes and they go, do you know what? Actually, the things that make this great are, and it's only by exposing exposing that, or trying to stray from it slightly, that you discover that. So I think that I've been looking at the pictures. They've been shooting in Britain. Phoebe Waller-Bridge is in it, who just has that kind of classic look and will fit into that era perfectly. And so, yeah, I am looking forward to it. I just think, Harrison Ford is. There's a video somewhere of him. He'd never seen something. I think he'd never seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, and they play it to him, and he just sits there and watches it, and is wonderfully grumpy about it.
I loved it.
I think you're going to say, and he really loved it for a second.
Yeah. I mean, maybe he did, but maybe he's playing up to his grumpiness. But I remember seeing it. I haven't seen it since. It definitely exists.
Brilliant.
He was an excellent man. In the 80s, was he your hero then, Harrison Ford?
Yeah. I would say so. He was just so cool. And I think that I was thinking about this for, the podcast I do is where men talk about their bodies. And sometimes we talk about the first body that we sort of noticed, where we went, oh, that's what a man is.
Yeah.
And for me, it was Harrison Ford on that rope bridge, wearing, with his tanned, he's fit, muscular, sweaty, but not like, he's not Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
He's like if your dad really, really tried to get into shape, except with, marvelous genetics on his side as well.
Yeah.
And once again, that smile. And I just think he's that classic, you can draw lines from like Cary Grant to Harrison Ford to whoever these days, Clooney in the 90s maybe, and then
Timothy Chalamet today.
Chalamet or your Bradley Coopers, things like that, the kind of the film star twinkle. So I think that he was my idea of man.
Yeah, and the confidence as well. It's the confidence of Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
The best lines are all his best lines are ad-libbed, aren't they? They're, it's quite famous.
Is that right?
Yeah, especially in Star Wars, he kind of famously said to George Lucas, you can write this shit, George, but you can't say it. And then decided to change all his lines. But the best line in Last Crusade is, for me, is when he throws the guy out of the airship and then turns to the couple and goes, "No ticket." And that's ad-libbed. Like, that's not scripted.
Was it?
And that's brilliant.
That got a big laugh over Christmas. Yeah. And even as a kid, the first Star Wars figure I chose. My mum got back late from a trip once, and she brought me Boba Fett. And it was before I really knew what Star Wars was. And one day I was taken out by my friend and her mum, and we went, and my mum said it was okay for me to get a toy. And so this lady said, you choose your Star Wars figure or whatever. And I chose Han Solo. And I was just so excited. His clothes were just cool. He was just the coolest. Yeah. And even though the face looked nothing like Harrison Ford, probably due to licensing. But I just remember just playing with that Han Solo. I had a Han Solo, I had a bad guy, I had a Boba Fett, and then I had to make them work by living in a little Playmobil chalet that my family gave me. And they were all hanging around there. There was a sticker. I just remember this. There was a sticker that just said Simon and Garfunkel. So I guess they were big Simon and Garfunkel fans. Han Solo, the bad guy, and Boba Fett all living in a little chalet together, listening to the sound of silence.
Brilliant.
I mean, there's a sitcom right there, Danny.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic.
I'm sure that Disney Plus will be like, I'll sign that one up.
Yeah.
The second season of Boba Fett, wherever it is, the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
When you watched it, did you know who Sean Connery was at the same point? You like, that's Bond with Indiana Jones kind of thing?
Yeah. I was aware of Sean Connery, but he'd always had, that kind of dry wit. And in this, he was bumbling. He was bumbling, awkward. He was an academic. And my dad was an academic. And so he found that very funny. And so did I. And there was just that dynamic, because I wanted to be indie. And so I could see my dad in, Dr. Jones Senior, and he just played it perfectly. So for me, that is, there isn't a better sequel than that one.
What is your pinnacle sequence from Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade? What's your favourite point?
I suppose the one I remember being excited about in the cinema and laughing and being like, that's cool, is when there's some kind of motorcycle chase, and the bad guys are really bearing down, and it's Indiana Jones saving his dad, who's in the sidecar of this rickety thing, and them having to come up with ingenious ways of getting rid of Nazis. And it's that thing of, you want your dad to be proud of you. And in that moment, I was identifying with Indy, I suppose. And because his dad hasn't really seen him do all this mad action stuff before. And he's shocked by it, and he gets involved as well with his umbrella. So I think there's just something wonderful about the father and son dynamic there that really appealed to me.
They are so good. Their chemistry is so good in that film.
Yes.
Yeah, it really is. You're in good company as well, because we had the only other person to choose Last Crusade was Helen O'Hara. She's a brilliant film critic and author. She writes for Empire magazine, and she chose it in our first episode. So you're really good company there.
Well, then I'm clearly a genius.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's see if you can carry this on.
Yeah.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
This episode is brought to you by Starry. When you drink Starry Lemon Lime Soda, every sip is a win. Perfect for game time or anytime. It's a crisp, refreshing lemon lime soda that's caffeine-free and bursting with flavor that makes you go, ah. Starry hits different. Find it in stores or online today.
Sergeant and Mrs. Smith, you are going to love this house.
Is that a tub in the kitchen? There's no field manual for finding the right home. But when you do, USAA Homeowners Insurance can help protect it the right way. Restrictions apply.
What is your most disappointing sequel? So not your worst sequel, but one you thought you're going in with high hopes and you came out and you're like, ah.
Well, the greatest film of all time, as has been established already on this podcast, is Ghostbusters. It is.
So is this your worst or most disappointing, or is it both?
Well, Ghostbusters is the greatest film of all time.
Okay.
Therefore, Ghostbusters 2 was always going to be up against it. And I had huge high hopes for Ghostbusters 2. And I was willing it in that cinema seat to be absolutely brilliant. I was convincing myself it kind of was, but it wasn't. What I loved so much about Ghostbusters, because when it was first pitched, it was going to be set in the future and it was going to be mad and it was going to be incredibly expensive. And Ivan Reitman, the director, he ended up going, you know what this is? This is a film about three men starting a small business. And immediately it was grounded in that kind of reality. Yeah. So the tone of it was, okay, look, you're going to have to go with this a bit, but there's loads of ghosts. But it was kind of real New York. The characters felt real. They had to talk about, remortgaging things. It's obviously the performances are heightened, but they're also quite subtle. You really believe that Ray really believes. Egon, you get, Pete Venkman, despite, looking back on it now and seeing he's slightly morally dubious when it comes to women. He's willing to torture a man in order to get close to a woman barely out of her teens. He's a little creepy with Dana. But if you remove that, just his wit, the coolness of it. I mean, these were people at the height of their powers, coming off the biggest show on TV, Saturday Night Live, and they are putting their efforts into this brilliant idea. And for me, it was just absolute perfection. And when Ghostbusters 2 came out, which was some years later, I think, I feel that they were going like, yeah, remember, you all love that film, so let's have loads of fun with this one. And that's cool, but I wanted it to feel as real as the first one did, and not to be so sort of silly at times. With the River of Slime or the Dancing Toaster, I felt like we'd done that. With the giant Statue of Liberty, I felt like that's not as good as the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. It felt to me like the tone had shifted away from what I really loved. That idea that, you know, if it had been me, I think I would have loved to have seen the promise of the first moment when they come up with the idea for Ghostbusters to have come true. When Bill Murray or Pete Venkman goes, the franchise rights alone will make us rich beyond our wildest dreams. That's where I wanted Ghostbusters 2 to go. I wanted there to be franchises of Ghostbusters all over the country, all over the world, a bit like Subway. And there's some problem with that, you know, and there's huge teams of Ghostbusters out there. And instead, we find them in a world where they've been forgotten, or they're now ridiculed, or they're playing children's parties. And immediately I didn't buy that. I thought, how would the world have forgotten about the massive supernatural event where these guys are all Neil Armstrong. You know, they've done this one thing that's so incredible that they should be celebrated forever. Yeah. And instead they're down in their luck, you know, playing kids' party, you know, and I feel like they didn't learn anything from Winston. He had many more lines in the original scripts, I believe, and then they were sort of slowly edited down. And Ernie Hudson has talked about his disappointment with what he'd been sold and what the character ended up being, and it felt like he was still sidelined. That's why I loved watching Ghostbusters Afterlife. It felt like I was like, they're giving Winston a lot of lines, and I was like, oh yeah, no, that's good, because they're obviously going, yeah, we really messed up there before. Yeah, and I watched Afterlife with my kids over Christmas, and I also watched Ghostbusters, the original, and I watched the reboot, the 2016 reboot. And Ghostbusters still absolutely holds up, stands up. It's exactly the right length. There isn't that extra hangover of a half hour you get with so many films nowadays. I used to love 3-hour films, and now I'm like, come on, this is 90 minutes. Come on. Yeah. And Afterlife, I thought, I mean, you know, it affected us on an emotional level.
Yeah.
Me and we lost my dad almost a year ago, and with no spoilers involved, there's a lot of kind of good emotion there that when I looked around and I had tears, and I saw that my eldest and my second eldest were crying, and we all knew why. And it was quite cathartic, but being able to do it through a fantastic film. The only film that's had that effect on me in the last year or two is surprisingly, I was expecting nothing from it, the animation Onward. Oh, right. Which, oh my God, I was so impressed by what they did with information they didn't give you. So they withhold stuff from you, and then they release it at exactly the right moment to really stamp on your heart. And that's real skill that they managed there. So Ghostbusters 2 was disappointing, but it's probably my fault because it meant so much to me, the original, that I would sort of rather they just left that there. I think
I really like that. So I love Ghostbusters 2. I think I really enjoy it.
Oh right, yeah.
And I really like listening to you as to why you don't, because I think your reasons for not liking it are really valid. And I actually kind of really like your idea of these franchise Ghostbusters, and that kind of always felt wrong to me as a kid as well. It's like, why are the Ghostbusters being forgotten? How come people don't know this amazing thing? They've saved the world. Like, why does no one believe them when they're saying it's happening again? What is this?
It was all caught on tape, you know. There was film crews everywhere.
Sean in his episode came up with a great bit of like, they're in court and they're telling you there's rivers of pink slime running through the sewers, and nobody goes to look and goes, oh yeah, they're right, there is.
yeah. That's a good point. It is, you know, it's probably, if I watched it again, you know, I would probably be like, this is fun. Come on. It was just, I just think of that kid just sitting there.
I want to go into this.
To be the greatest thing ever.
So, how old were you when you first saw Ghostbusters 2?
When I first saw Ghostbusters 2, I would have been however old I was when it came out. I was immediately down to the
1989. Cinema. Both your picks so far have been 1989.
Is that right?
Yeah,
it was a big year. That cinema for me, right opposite the Wimpy, that's where I saw Back to the Future, Back to the Future 2, Back to the Future 3, Ghostbusters. I'd just moved to England and we were in this rental house. And I remember film, whatever it was, coming on the TV, and they said, "Oh no, also supernatural, scary comedy. It's coming out this year." And they played the trailer for Ghostbusters, and I was like, "That is me. That's it right there." And feeling that moment of regret when I went in to watch it with my mum, because it's quite spooky at the start, and Alice the ghost, the ghost in the library screams at Alice the librarian, and I was like, "This was a mistake. I should not be here." And I'm only at the very beginning of the film and it's already this frightening. But then the music kicks in and you go, "I'm going to be all right. It's safe. It's going to be fine." So yeah, and leaving the cinema that night, desperate to be a Ghostbuster, but also desperate never to see a ghost. So I don't know how that would work.
Brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant.
I did end up working for Ghost Corps for a while in America, which is Ivan Reitman's production company. And we were working on an idea that would have been more about those franchises. And it was right after the reboot came out, and very slowly they had like 4 different things that they were doing, and very slowly they started to be dropped. Mine was the last one to be dropped, and it was like, oh, okay. And then obviously his son was like, "Come on, I can do this."
Yeah.
And he kept the legacy going with a brilliant film.
Yeah.
Can you give us any hints what your idea was? It's always interesting.
Well, I'll just say, because I don't know if they make you sign all these things. They're very protective of these things, but it was to do with a world in which the Ghostbusters were appreciated, and there were franchises, but some franchises were better than others. Let's say, just in the same way that some subways are better than others.
Yeah, true. And Wimpy's. I've always wondered how it was always just focused on New York, because I always felt there was a bigger picture there. I mean, ghosts must have been everywhere, mustn't they, at that point? I'm also like Rich. I do like Ghostbusters too, but I'm pretty sure that was Ghostbusters 1 and 2 were probably one of the first films I watched with my parents, because they seemed like that kind of tone that you could watch with a family. Yeah,
absolutely. And there's jokes for everyone.
So you've showed your family. You've showed 1 reboot and the new one. You haven't even mentioned there's a second Ghostbusters, or
I don't think we've watched Ghostbusters 2 together. The last time I watched it was because I chose Ghostbusters as my specialist chosen subject on Celebrity Mastermind.
Brilliant.
Nice.
So I watched Ghostbusters 2. I watched as many of the animated ones as I could. I was studying box office stats in Germany, thinking they're going to ask me really obscure stuff here. And I only got 1 or 2 hard ones. So I did a lot of research I bought a book and read about how they did the special effects. So yeah, there was a lot of research went into that.
Did you win?
I got all correct with no passes. But then my general knowledge subjects were what I would argue could not be considered general knowledge. So I faltered somewhat.
Amazing. So good. Is there any other sequels you really hate? You just really, really don't like? Or
not that spring well.
Come on.
I guess we could go down the Die Hard routes. Another absolutely perfect film in Die Hard. I mean, the script must have been 6 pages long, because my eldest is quite mature, and I like watching what I consider classics with him. But I didn't realize that pretty much the whole script is just the F word. And it might be, he might be behind a desk and he'll say it, or he might be in a lift. It doesn't matter. That's all he says. Apart from when it's the MF word after yippee-ki-yay. So, but once you get over that, and, I trust my kid, and he's not going to start saying all this stuff and, leaping from behind desks at school, calling people these words. But a perfect one. Die Hard 2, good. And then things changed. I remember being in Chicago, and it was like it's the coldest place. And you had to be careful everywhere you walked, because there were massive blocks of ice hanging from buildings, and people were like, "No, we don't walk there because these things fall." I was so cold, and I had a flight that night. I just thought, I'm just going to go to the cinema because it's warm there.
Good idea.
And I went to watch I don't know, Die Hard 20. It was the one where Bruce Willis wasn't really the main character. There was another guy there, maybe his son-in-law, or I don't know what. Anyway,
it was. Is it 5, Dave?
Did they go to Russia?
Yeah, I think Russia was involved.
Yeah, it's the fifth
because it looked a lot warmer than Chicago. I remember that. Yeah. So, and that's when I sort of lost a bit of interest with Die Hard. Although I wish Bruce Willis all the best.
I mean, he doesn't care. Bruce Willis is just in anything at the moment, isn't he? You know, it's like.
Did you see him though recently on TV? He just was accepting an award or something, and he just went. There's a lot of controversy. You know, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Well, no, it is not a Christmas movie. Die Hard is a fucking Bruce Willis movie. And I thought, yes, you're right.
Amazing.
Brilliant.
But he's not wrong. But it is also a Christmas film.
Fair enough. I'm not getting into it.
We're going to argue about that. Is there a sequel that you've been dragged to because the first one was so bad, but you actually liked the second one?
Not that I can think of. I think that probably as you get older, you start to realise that your time is quite precious, and you're like, I'm not. You know, like I can't imagine getting into any. I can't imagine the new Fast and Furious coming out, and me going, Fast and Furious 10, yes, please. I haven't seen 1 to 9. And I don't imagine it's hard to pick up.
No, it's not.
But at the same time, I saw something that looked quite interesting, The Rise of the Foot Soldier, and it looked like something that used to have no budget and has now been given a budget and might be worth looking at. And I watched the trailer, I thought, I'd probably enjoy that. And then just thought, that's too late. You know, why? There's other things I can, you know. So no, probably.
Oh, so you no animated movies that your kids have dragged you to?
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
You came out and you thought, that was all right.
Okay, I watched Boss Baby 2 the other day.
There we go.
And I was just like, what's happened here? Because all those films are so clever. You watch things like Encanto, and even though you're like, oh, the song about Bruno is great. We don't talk about Bruno, no. And then you go, they only called him Bruno so that they could do that with a film. This whole thing's built on a lie. But you can't say that to the child, obviously. You can't go, this was actually probably reverse engineered to takes the sheen off. Frozen 2 I went to and I thought was great. So I mean, but Boss Baby 2, no. It was so confusing, strange, and long.
Yeah.
And the jokes didn't really land for me. And I noticed that my kids weren't, entranced by it or
Rich has that problem as well.
It was just kind of like, oh yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, I've got a little boy, and sometimes you know when a film's not good because he'll just be like, no, 20 minutes in. Yeah. So like Home Sweet Home Alone. We tried watching that, and we got 20 minutes into that, and he went, "This isn't Home Alone. I'm not watching it."
Quite right. Well, that's what all film reviewers.
He's not
say.
wrong.
This is not Home Alone.
Yeah. He wasn't wrong. It was bad.
We wanted to watch Home Alone 2 over Christmas, but I don't know. We got into other things instead. We watched Ron's Gone Wrong.
That's nice.
Which I thought was great, really great, and had. So I felt like it had all the 80s vibes that I seem to be obsessed with talking to you now. But it had a sort of 80s teen vibe to it.
Yeah.
While at the same time, had all the stuff that kids love, which is like, God, imagine if I could have my own little robot.
Yeah.
Imagine if it did do all these things. Imagine if it would just, and it will date it because, in 10 years, they will have things that are much better than those robots, probably. But no, I thought that was good. But yes, Boss Baby 2 could do one.
Whatever you're into, it's on Prime. Maybe you love pop music. With Prime, you can watch documentaries about your favorite bands, stream all their albums on Amazon Music, and even order some merch in time for their next concert, all in one place. From shopping to streaming, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
This episode is brought to you by Tinder. Cuffing season is in full effect, which makes Tinder the place to be right now. There's a new wave of folks coming back to the app, ready to find love, fun, or just a new friend. And if you're worried about never meeting up with your matches IRL, don't be. 1.5 million Tinder users go on dates in person every week. Explore all of the possibilities for yourself. Tinder, it starts with a swipe. Download Tinder today.
This episode is brought to you by L'Oreal Paris Everpure Hair Care and their Bond Repair System. If you style or color your hair, you know how damaging it can be. Why pay for overpriced bond repair products, you know the ones, when you can get the same results for a third of the price with Everpure Bond Repair? If you want smoother, stronger, softer hair, this is the dupe for you. Put this dupe to the test. Buy it now at l'orealparisusa.com/bond repair.
And now for the final question, which is the one we're all been waiting for. What is your dream sequel?
Well, I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about some of the most perfect films that you don't want a sequel for. I thought that's the way to approach it. And then what's the one where you could go, oh, okay, no, but that one maybe. And I don't want a sequel for E.T., for example, because I know the ending of E.T. and it's perfect, for that. Although when you watch it again, it's incredibly slow and quite empty. And sparse, and the script and it feels like it's not been recorded properly at times. And maybe that's my telly, but when it builds and you have those magic moments, because you think back to those magic moments, the crane kick in Karate Kid. You know, you watch it again, and in your head, that's a really, really long sequence, which is just fantastic. And in reality, it's like he goes to a karate tournament. He kicks someone in the face, and then it's finished, and it's the whole thing lasts about 2 minutes. And you're like, I'm sure that was longer when it was more magical. Apart from that, he's just like waxing cars. So I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, what's the one that I love that I could see a sequel for with all these years that have passed? Because in my head, the sequel would come out now, and I think I would love to have Groundhog Day 2.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And I would want to know what's happened to our lovely weatherman in all those times. How that day, what that day taught him, and how he applied it to his life, and whether he has tried to find a way of it happening again, whether there are mistakes that he's made since that he would love to put right somehow, relationships that he could fix if only he knew how to say the right thing, but all delivered with that Bill Murray, you know, the weariness, and he would be even more weary now. I think that he would. I think it's a New York film, because I think you need a huge cast of characters for a sequel like that, and I think that it has to be recognizable and city, and I think that it would strike a chord as well, because we've all kind of for the last couple of years been living in a form of our own Groundhog Day. And for Bill Murray to have that second chance to go out there and get angry with people as well, and with no consequences whatsoever, and fix things where appropriate, or, you know, realize maybe he's too stubborn these days or too set in his ways. Maybe he wouldn't even realize if he was living a Groundhog Day, because nothing in his life seems to ever change. And I think it would be called Groundhog Day 2. And it would be, the tagline would be something like "Same day, different shit."
Brilliant, and, brilliant.
And then that's what we'd see.
I love the tagline. That's fantastic. Well,
they can have it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That needs, with anyone listening, that needs to be made.
Yes, yeah, make it now.
Yeah, because Bill Murray's great. We still love him.
Absolutely.
I think he enjoyed making that one, so he might come back for a sequel for it as well. That's the problem with Bill Murray. You're never quite sure what mood he's in.
Yeah.
Would you bring back Andy McDowell? Would they still be together, or would you have made them break up?
I think she'd have to have figured in it, but I think that probably they'd have broken up almost immediately, because she would realise that, well, he's making a lot of mistakes all of a sudden, isn't he? Doesn't seem to know how to deal with anyone.
Go back and redo all this stuff.
Because he's not being given 500 chances to say the right thing. So he's probably quite a different person to a day later. But I'd like to see him solo. He's probably got a son or a daughter or both, but he's living on his own, and he's quite happy to be a curmudgeon.
Yeah.
I quite like the idea of him being annoyed that he can't get back to redoing stuff to make things better as well.
Yeah.
Quite like that kind of like, because he sort of hated being in the loop when he was in it, and then kind of missing it now that he's not. I like that kind of premise.
Yeah, because he was given the magic key. It's just that it came at a cost. It's like, you can come in, but you may never leave. Here's the key. Here's everything you want. You've got as many chances as you want. You can read everything in the world, learn about everyone in the world, be the most popular person in the world, or be an absolute idiot. It doesn't matter, because tomorrow you'll still have that knowledge, but you can do whatever you like again.
Yeah.
And now he's living in a world of consequence, and he wants to be the guy who can act with no consequences. Maybe.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So he turns up every year at that event. Fingers crossed. The groundhog.
Yeah, he would always
comes
turn
out.
up, but something would happen in New York, and then he wakes up, and then maybe he finds it. I'll tell you what. Maybe he finds a classic golden oldie station. He's listened to every other radio station in the world, and then at 6 a.m. or whatever that morning, you hear Sonny and Cher, and then he wakes up and he knows it's happened again.
Brilliant.
Smile on his face.
Have you seen, there's a film called Palm Springs?
Immediately jumps out the window.
There's a recent film called Palm Springs with Andy Samberg.
Yeah.
That kind of has the principle of Groundhog Day, essentially.
That's
but
true.
in a way that they kind of treat it in a much more depressed kind of fashion of like, what is this hell I'm stuck in?
Yeah, I watched half of it, and then I was really enjoying it, but it was very late, and I thought I'll watch the rest of that, and then I forgot.
It's worth watching, definitely.
But it's it was very good what I watched.
Yeah, J.K. Simmons is really good in it as being a guy who's kind of been forced into this loop by Andy Samberg's character and is incredibly so pissed off about it. He just kills him randomly whenever he gets the opportunity.
That's right. I'll tell you what, then let's not do Groundhog Day 2. Let's do Boss Baby 3.
No. And you know they will anyway.
Oh, they definitely will, yeah. But the Groundhog Day 2 sounds great. I'd pay money to go and see that, definitely.
Yeah, I love Bill Murray. I think he's a genius.
Yeah.
But him turning up in any movie is always a highlight for me.
Yeah.
Or even in interviews. He did a good interview with Jimmy Kimmel recently that made me laugh.
Oh, did he?
He was wherever he was filming a latest Wes Anderson film, but he had like 2 translators that they had to go through to get to him, and then he would answer it, and then they would go back to the translators, and then go back to Jimmy Kimmel, and it went on for about 20 minutes, and it was only like 2 questions, but
that's great.
You could tell he was enjoying it.
When I joined the BBC when I was in my early 20s, and I had a mentor called John Pidgeon, and he was just fantastic, and he had all these stories that always made you think, is John mad? Or has he had these lives, where he'd be on like tour with the Faces in Dundee with Rod Stewart, and you're like, is that true? And then he was telling me about how he, I think he'd been working for the NME, and he went to interview Michael Jackson at the height of his powers.
Wow.
And again, I was like, is this real? But then he played me the recording, and it is. He was allowed to interview Michael Jackson at Neverland, I think, but only if Janet Jackson or maybe LaToya sat between them, and John had to ask her the question, and then she would repeat it and ask Michael, and then Michael would respond.
Wow.
And John just had to go along with it and be like, okay, yeah, absolutely. And he was just this English journalist, quite suave, just having to be like, all right, well, I guess I'm doing this then. And so people have unusual ideas, but at least Bill Murray did it for comic effect.
Yeah, for a laugh.
Well, let's get on and make Groundhog Day 2, please.
Absolutely. I mean, or potentially Yes Man 2. I mean, that's kind of a
yeah. He could say no to everything and just sit in his house.
Yeah,
that sounds like lockdown.
Yeah, it's basically lockdown, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's what I've been doing for 2 years.
And those were Danny Wallace's Unequal Sequels. What a cracking end to the series.
Oh, man. That voice is the most radio-friendly voice I've had to deal with.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Perfect.
What a gent. What an absolute gent. Thank you, Danny, for giving us your time. He's a very busy man. And we're very lucky to get an episode in with him. And it was great. And his picks, Rich. Interesting.
Slight hot take on Ghostbusters 2. Worst sequel, really?
But everything he said, I found myself agreeing with it.
Yeah.
I was like, they are problems with the film. I mean, I still love Ghostbusters 2, and we both said it. So, no one can accuse us of just pandering to our guest. Got in there, like, you're wrong. But yeah, he was also right. His information about what he wanted from a future Ghostbusters, the fact that he worked for a while developing developing something at Ghostbusters that he couldn't really tell us. We did try, ladies and gentlemen.
We did try, yeah. I
thought that was really interesting. If you want to listen to last week's episode where Dave from the New Cinema talks about it being his best sequel, and this is...
It's a contrast.
I find it fascinating, especially when I was editing. His best pick was Indiana Jones. All of his stories were so delightful and lovely. I think I would describe this episode as like a warm hug a little bit, because the stories about his grandparents and he's watching films with his kids, and especially Ghostbusters Afterlife, talking about his dad. Everything I want this podcast to be, basically. It's funny, it was hilarious, moving.
It was so good.
I think we can let fans and listeners know that is accidental on our half, how that happened over the course of 2 seasons.
How do you mean?
It was meant to be just about films.
It was. It was just meant to be about movies, and it turns out movies bring out a lot of emotions.
Who would have known? It's great. And his dream pick, Groundhog Day.
Yeah, Groundhog Day. Which I can't. It's obvious now. It's a little bit like Face Off last week with the Cinema Aisle. As soon as he said it, I was like, "Of course it is." It's just one of those ones where, of course, that's your dream sequel. That's a great shout.
I love how people sit and think about things like this for us, not just for our pod, but things that they come up with. They've been thinking about for a while. Most of the time.
Absolutely.
I've been
and I
thinking
like
about
how
it for years.
Different it is. So some people come on and they've got a fully formed pitch for the movie they want to make, and some people come on just going, I just wanted more of this, and this is what I love about it. And I like that difference. You get different ideas from different people. That's really nice.
And he was an absolute gent.
Yeah, it was a brilliant podcast. We really enjoyed it, and what a wonderful way to end Series 2, because this is the last episode of Series 2.
Yeah, this is it.
I can't believe we got through 2 series. But don't worry, because not only have we got a best of, we've got a best of Series 2 coming next week, so you can get all the best bits that you might have missed from this series, all our best bits with our favourite guests. But also, we've got all of our bonus, all our extra episodes that are still going to carry on Fridays. So all those nice little half-hour snippets.
Yeah.
And we'll be back with Series 3 before you know it.
We don't know when yet.
Well,
apparently, Rich.
Sort of do. Well, I would say, March, April time? We'll be back?
I would say early April, yeah. Basically, as soon as we get people recorded, we'll put them up. But the hard work starts now, Rich.
Yeah, this is where we do all the work, you see. So in between the 2 seasons, that's when we record. That's where we record with everybody. Yeah. And then we're not recording with the interviews while we're putting the season out.
We try not to anyway.
That's the idea anyway. Yeah, that's the idea. Doesn't always work out, but hey, there we go. If you love what you've heard today, and why would you not, and it's your first time listening to us, maybe you're a big Danny Wallace fan and you just thought you'd tune in and listen to him, and you think, actually, it's quite a nice podcast, I'll go back and listen to the rest. Really do that. There are some brilliant guests. Go back and listen to the rest of this season. Go back and listen to season 1. There's some great guests on season 1 that you really, really need to go back and listen to. There are some fantastic episodes on there. You can also keep listening to all our extra episodes. Click on that little subscribe button, and they'll just drop there automatically for you in whichever platform it is you use to get your podcasts. Click that little button, we'll be there. Whilst you're clicking that button, give us a little 5 stars, give us a little like and a little heart with your subscription, and we'll just love you forever and give you loads of hugs.
Yeah,
because that's the kind of guys we are. You can also find us on social media. So we're at Unequal Sequel on Twitter and on Instagram, and you can also send us an email at we're unequalsequel@hotmail.com. And I can't believe I've got that email address right for the whole series.
I mean, bravo, sir, bravo, yeah. Please stick with us. We have got some big things coming in the future. We've got some extras. We've got some ideas that we can't wait to roll out. All the bots roll out. That one's for you, Rich, because
see, it's catching. It's
now it's the end. I can actually say there was a ban on Rich not to mention Transformers much this year because he couldn't help himself. And mate, you did really well.
I know, right? I haven't mentioned Transformers in about
really well,
at least 2 months.
I'll tell you what. In season 3, you can mention them again.
Woo!
But I'm going to ban you not talking about something else.
Oh, okay.
Okay, cool.
Fair enough.
Have you got anything else to say until next week?
No, I think that's it. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you very soon.
Yeah, I've got nothing else to say, so it's a bye-bye from me, a bye-bye, and a bye-bye from him.
Bye!
Have a great week. Thank you so much. See you later.